and welcome to Art 116 on a bright, beautiful Monday morning, except for the bright and the beautiful part. I'm James Fritz, your lovely host. I think I'm going to get right to it down here to break a little ice, and then in about 5 minutes, I'm going to take attendance to see who's all here. So I'm going to change to a camera that we love to use. Hey, that's my camera. Oh my gosh, look at all that. Okay, so we're working on this, and as a matter of fact, hopefully you guys have been able to finish this up. This was the color wheel to be done only with the three primary colors of yellow, red, and blue. Although you guys don't even know primary, secondary, and intermediate colors yet because I haven't given you that piece of the lecture. But hopefully you were able to glean it from the first 3 to 4 pages of our text in chapter 7, which we're going to be going over very shortly. So I'd like you to try to get this thing finished up and photographed as good as you can and uploaded. Today is a wonderful day for trying to photograph something like this because you can go right over to a window, and it's a cloudy day, so you got lots of nice diffused light, diffused sunlight, because it's under cloud cover coming through your window. That means your whole window acts as a light source. And so all I ask is that when you're photographing something like a piece of artwork that you really care about, that you try to not get I'm going to try to put this over where my light is. I'm trying to not cast, see how I'm casting a shadow over the thing, and you can kind of see the shadow dancing over there. I want to make sure that when you're photographing your thing with your camera, you're out someplace where you're not casting a shadow over the artwork. If you can get your artwork flat on a table, and if you can get your camera to be parallel to that artwork so that your camera lens, whoops, my camera lens is parallel to the middle of the artwork, then I can get a relatively flat, parallel, not skewed image. And I want to try to do that where I'm not shading any part of the artwork with my camera or my face or my head or something like that. So you can see the shade falling on the artwork, and that makes the colors more dull. I can't see the colors as well, and the shadows are very distracting in a photograph. So please try to do those kinds of things to get you the best quality photograph that you can possibly get on this thing. Try it at slightly different angles to see if you can get the best reflective quality of your image so that you can record it the best you can on your camera, and then email that image to yourself and upload that to the coursework assignment for the color wheel. And that's how we're going to do assignments that we are painting that are non-digital assignments. You're going to have to photograph it so that you can upload it for us to look at. Okay, that's a thing. That was a couple minutes, and so more people maybe have been able to join us, but I don't see anybody else who really joined us well. I have several of these projects that I've gone ahead and I printed everything out on photographic glossy paper so that I can actually pin these up in the gallery. And I'm going to have a gallery show whether the gallery is open or not, whether people can actually come and see it. It's really important for me to keep things going. So I'm going to have a gallery show, and I'm going to put the occasional one of these out on the internet, on email to like Sock Talk or something, which is our kind of our local chat email listserv for the campus, so that all the other people on campus who are working in offices and stuff, whether they are teachers or administrators or all of the other folks in supporting roles on campus, might be able to see some of our projects. And so I just wanted to show you the projects, and some of these I had to reformat. Some of these I had to reformat because you had conceived of them, in vertical format page, and so I made the page horizontal format, and then I kind of had to just reformat your image a little bit and kind of put your text boxes back together again so that they all worked. But for the most part, I was able to do this pretty good. And this one, Kelsey, I just played with a little bit because I could. And you had this all in one, the text was all on one line here. There was nothing wrong with that. But when I reformatted this to a horizontal page, and then I made the image a lot bigger on the page so that it would print out nicely, I got to resize the text. And when I was resizing the text, I looked at the triangular nature of this part of the composition, and I saw this as a straight line, and it was relatively small in that big negative space. And so I went ahead and made it so big that I got what is right to come out on the second line by just sizing it up to about 50 or 60 point type. And now I've got a triangular text box that is kind of like a triangular image that is the flip of this triangular image over here. So I hope you guys can see what I did here, that because this is sort of triangular into the space and this negative space is sort of triangular, by dropping part of a line down into the second line, I was able to get something that is somewhat triangular for the triangular space. Plus, as an editor, I'm kind of looking at what happens when you break up the sentence into phrases and see how effective the phrases are. And so the time is always right to do what is right. And I wanted to just put what is right on a second line all by itself, that might make it just a little bit more isolated, just a little bit more, have a little bit more punch all by itself, so that the sentence becomes two phrases. Again, it's kind of like telling a joke. It's the setup and the punchline. And so we've got the setup, the time is always right. To do, I didn't know what to do with that, because by the time I get it down here, then the two lines are about the same length. So what is right seemed to be like a really strong finish to the sentence. And so that's why I wanted to put it by itself on the second one. So anyway, I took a little bit of liberties occasionally with some of these things, and I hope you'll forgive me for that. But it was a chance for us to maybe just do a little bit of kind of learning and reflecting on the process of how this graphic design stuff works, because we're not only interested in the image, we're super interested in the text and how the text works as a visual element in the image. So trying to see how the spacing and everything of the text works with the image is as important as just getting the text legible in there so that we can see it. So now it's been 10 minutes. I'm going to put this back away again. And I'm going to come back to you guys with my beautiful face, because everybody wants to see the beautiful face. It's James. All right. And so what I wanted to do today is do what I should have done last week, which is start my PowerPoint presentation talking about chapter 7 and the first 4 pages in chapter 7, and then segueing into the next piece of project. So I want you guys to finish your color wheel, photograph it, and upload the photograph as your color wheel for that project. Then we're going to start a new project today that I'm going to walk us through. This is a 3 for the price of 1 project. This is going to take us most of this week to get this done, because the top part of it, which we are going to do first, is a thing that's all by itself. I'd like you to do that without doing anything else on the page. So don't do anything else until we get to that point. Okay, so having said all that, good morning. Welcome to the morning session of Art 116. And I see in my little crystal ball here, Adriel is here, and Emily is there, and Jordan is here, and Kelsey is there, and Riley, and you guys, God bless you. You are the A-team, the people who come every time. and attend the lectures. I hope that everybody else who is now watching this on YouTube at your own time because you're at work or something, that you'll somehow email me or contact me to let me know that you are attending class on a regular basis and watching the YouTube videos, because right now I have no way of collecting data on your attendance or how often that you guys are checking into the class, except by receiving your assignments in a timely manner, which is very nice. So I'm going to go to share screen and talk about our first part of our chapter. And I would like you guys to follow along. And if you are note takers, if you actually like to have notebooks for your college learning process, I really would like you to take notes. It's important when you're either reading the text to take notes from the text, or take notes from a lecture whenever you get a lecture from a faculty member, because that really helps with the active learning process. It's really hard to remember anything when you're listening to a lecture and have that all recorded in your brain. So being able to write it down in a notebook gives you the chance of writing it down the first time. Then when you go back to study it, it gives you the chance to review it the second time. And that all reinforces the learning that happened originally during the presentation, which is the third time. So that's how we reinforce and reinforce the learning process, is by both listening and doing the active learning piece, which is taking notes, if that helps at all. Welcome to Color Theory, Chapter 7. And we're going to start talking about color theory. So we got to bring in a couple of things here. Your authors start off by talking about light, because light is really the source of color in our entire world and how we perceive color. We perceive it through reflected light, or we perceive it through light itself. So there's all of that. Then we're going to go into artist colors and artist color mixing, pretty much based on pigments. And that's pretty much going to be the subtractive color process and the subtractive color theory. So we will touch on the additive color process and additive color theory. And then we're going to forget about that for the rest of the quarter. Sorry, but that's the way I go. And we'll start talking about the physical properties of color, because that's what your authors like to talk about here. So moving forward, you guys have seen this before, hopefully in a physics class, in a science class, even going back as far as grade school. You hopefully have seen white light being shown through a glass prism, a triangular glass prism, and having it become refracted, or having the light waves bent as it moves through that prism medium. And it does the same thing with raindrops. When you see a rainbow too. White light entering the glass prism is refracted, and the red light has the longer wavelength and is the less energetic of the wavelengths of light colors, which makes no sense to me, because something with a longer wavelength that is a lower power thing, I thought should be refracted more, and something that is more energetic, I thought it should be refracted less. But this occurs exactly the opposite. So red is bent the least and is refracted the least, and violet, which is a higher power, higher wavelength, shorter wavelength energy, is bent more and it's refracted more. So that's the facts. Go figure that out. If you become, a physicist dealing with light, especially, you'll figure out why this is actually true, and maybe come back and tell your stupid art teacher why this is the way that light refracts. So we get light refracting and getting bent into its own individual color bands as a result of that, giving us the colors of the rainbow. And here's an example of it with white light entering from the back of the prism, and the colors being refracted and coming out the side of the prism. Okay, your authors take a moment to touch on the idea of additive color. And for those of you who are dealing with color in computers, color that is that we deal with every day on our monitor screens, color that might be used in terms of colored light in theatrical lighting. That is to say, putting gels in front of spotlights to create different colors of light on a stage for a stage production, either theatrical or musical stage production. You guys use the additive color process. And the additive color process looks like this. These three old-fashioned slide projectors are each projecting light through a filter. And so we get red light on the lower left-hand side. We get blue light over on the right-hand side. And we get green light over on the top. And those three colors, green, red, and blue, are the additive color primaries. Those are the primary colors of light that cannot that you cannot make those colors by mixing any other two forms of light. And then you can see what happens when you mix those colors together. When you mix the green light with the red light, you get yellow light. That's that little sliver of light that's right here in the Venn diagram between the green circle and the red circle. When you mix red and blue light, you get this magenta color, which is the overlapping part of the blue and red circle. When you mix blue and green light, you get this cyan or light blue colored blue light, which is the product of mixing green and blue light. And so these three colors, yellow, cyan, and magenta, are the secondary colors of light in the additive color process. When you mix everything together, you get white light. When you mix the green light, the red light, and the blue light together, when they are added together, they will give you white light. And that is the additive color process. We are adding light together to get the resulting colors from different light filters that we're starting with. And your computer monitor, cathode ray tube, is really based on three colors of light, red, blue, and green. And the way that we intermix that light to create colors on the screen is what gives us the infinite amount of colors that we get to work with on the computer screen. And now, because I'm an artist and we are going to be dealing with pigments and pigmented colors, we're going to forget about additive color for the rest of the quarter. Sorry about that. And pretty much concentrate on subtractive color. It's the first color theory that we really want to introduce you guys to as artists and designers. And subtractive color is really based on seeing reflected light coming from an object that has its color based on a pigment or whatever the material is made of on the surface of the object, reflecting the color back to it. How do we see color when it's reflected from an object? Well, a green leaf appears green because the leaf reflects only green light back to your eyes, absorbing all other colors into the material. So when we see color reflected from an object, or based on these paint pigments that we are playing with, we are experiencing subtractive color and the subtractive color theory. And that's kind of what the whole rest of the chapter and the whole rest of the quarter is based on, is subtractive color. The whole theory works the same way for additive color. You're just starting off with different primary colors with that different color theory. So our color wheel is based on the three primary colors illustrated here in the solid black line from your textbook. And we're always going to be able to see a color wheel that, when oriented in space, has yellow up on the top of it, red over in the left-hand side, lower left-hand side, and blue on the right-hand side, lower right-hand side. So this upside right equilateral triangle is a triad. and the primary triad is yellow, red, and blue. And we want to learn that. We want to learn that our primary colors in the subtractive process are yellow, red, and blue. We'd also like to know that the primary colors in additive color process are green, red, and blue, because there's going to be one question on that on the midterm quiz. And I really want you to remember that the additive colors primaries are different than the subtractive color primaries. So our subtractive color primaries are yellow at the top, red, and blue. Then our secondary colors are going to be orange, violet, and green. And this is indicated by the dotted line, the inverted equilateral triangle here. And all of these colors are kind of pointing towards the middle. And we're going to see that when we combine these complementary colors, colors that are across from each other on the color wheel are going to be color complements. When we combine them, they neutralize each other and they move towards something that's a little bit more of a brown in the middle of the color wheel. And so brown is about neutralized colors, and we're going to learn about that in just a couple of slides from now. But this slide is about the primary colors of yellow, red, and blue, and our secondary colors of orange, violet, and green. If I am going too fast, or if you guys have a question, please pipe right up, and you might have to actually shout it because I haven't reset my sound level. So my sound level on my computer resets every weekend down to about 15%. And I need to bump that up to about 80% so I can hear you guys clearly. So you guys are really going to have to shout it out while I am in screen share. Okay. Our primary colors of yellow, red, and blue have disappeared, and they've been replaced by their names. And our secondary colors of orange, violet, and green have now disappeared from the color wheel and have been replaced by their names. And the color circles that we can see are the intermediate colors. Intermediate colors are those produced by mixing primary colors with secondary colors. And they get their names from the primary color that gets mixed with the secondary color, and the primary color name always goes first, and the secondary color name always goes second. So this is yellow-orange here because you get it from mixing yellow with orange to make yellow-orange. This is red-orange here because red is the primary color, orange is the secondary color. When you mix red and orange together, you get red-orange. This one, red-violet, because of what we have to mix together to get red-violet. Same thing over here for blue-violet. Blue is the primary, so it comes first in the name, and then violets for blue-violet here. This one over on the right-hand side is blue-green, because we get it from mixing the primary blue with the secondary green. And finally, a yellow-green up here between yellow and green, because we are mixing yellow, the primary, with green, the secondary. And so we've got two more intermediate color triads here. By connecting them up with little solid lines, we can see that they are sort of triads. And designers like to look at organizing colors through triads because there are certain relationships that happen between colors that are triads, especially equally spaced ones around the color wheel. You get a high key one, that's a warm one. You get a lower key one, that's a warm one. And you get a cool one. You get a high key one that's a little bit still warmish, but then you get another one that's really warm, and you get one that is really cool and low key. So it's really interesting. The brightness, the amount of lightness or darkness in the color, and whether it's a warm or cool color kind of depends on where it is located on the color wheel. And we're going to get into warm and cool colors and all the rest of that stuff much later on in the quarter. Excuse me. Hello. I'm so pleasant to be around. When we put all of the colors back together around the outside edge of the color wheel, we get a 12 color wheel that looks like this. Again, with our primaries yellow, red, and blue. Our secondaries of orange, violet, and green. And then all of the intermediate colors are between them. Then we're going to come over here to the side, the right side, and talk about tertiary colors for just a minute. Tertiary colors don't happen on the outside edge of the color wheel, but if we were going to start mixing complementary color pairs and moving our way towards the center of the color wheel, we can see that if we were using green and red, and we're mixing a little bit of red into green, we get a neutralized green. If we mix a little bit more red into green, we get a little bit more neutralized green that's becoming brown. And if we mix equivalent amounts of green and red together, we get a brown. And that's the same thing that happens with all of these color complements. So yellow and violet, the same thing happens. A little yellow mixed into violet gets a neutralized violet. A little bit more yellow gets a more neutralized violet, tending towards brown. And equivalent amounts of yellow and violet neutralizing each other out completely give us a neutral brown. Brown is an absolute neutral color, and it's really vital in using colors to be able to know how to neutralize colors. Okay, our next project is all about the tertiary colors and playing with tertiary colors. Well, yeah, our absolutely next thing we're going to do is tertiary colors. I'm going to just go one more. Okay, this is a really terrible illustration. Sorry about that. But the rest of our next worksheet is also going to be dealing with this. If you look at a three-dimensional model of a color wheel and make it into something like a color sphere, the pole going through the middle of the sphere from North Pole to South Pole could be looked at as absolute neutrals, but they also could be shades of gray going up to white at the North Pole and shades of gray shading down to black at the South Pole. And so when we look at the colors on the absolute outside edge of the lateral pieces of the color sphere, when you start to add gray to the red at the equator, our color wheel is at the equator of this color sphere. And so back here would be full spectrum intensity red. When we start adding gray or higher and higher keys of gray or even white to the red, as we get up here in the northern latitudes towards the North Pole, we get things that start to become more magenta, and then finally shades of pink, and then finally a white pink right up here before we get to white at the North Pole. The same way if we're adding grays to the red as we're moving into the southern hemisphere, we get darker and darker shades of red until we get way down here into reddish blacks and finally a black down here at the South Pole. So you could take a color wheel and make a three-dimensional color model out of it. And then you can get all of those different paint chips that you can see at the hardware store or home center when you're trying to buy paint, wall paint for your home, for the interior or exterior of your home. This is what happens when we really use kind of a three-dimensional model, including adding white and black to a color to get all the different possible shades of the color that are possible. So full spectrum intensity color is here at the equator. It's also called full chroma. Chroma is the actual word that we're going to use for intensity of color. And that's going to be another one of those words that are going to be on the midterm quiz is chroma. So down here, C-H-R-O-M-A, chroma is a word that we should use for the intensity or brightness of the color. Hue is actually the name of the color. And so we prefer the term hue as a technical term when we're talking about colors. And then we're going to also talk about the value of the color, the amount of light or dark reflected back to the eye from that particular color or shade or tint of color. So these three constituents, hue, color, value, the amount of light or dark reflected back to the eye, and chroma, the intensity of the color. Those three things are in constant communication with each other when we are looking at and judging and trying to figure out which color we want to use in a composition. This would be a really good place to stop, wouldn't it? I probably should. I'm going to hit the stop share button and I'm going to come right back to you guys. So, are all of you just dazed and confused right now by this concept? Or have you been able to read those first 4 or 5 pages of the chapter and now get it a little bit more confirmed in your mind with my presentation, to understand that color theory isn't just going to be about the colors that are bright, full spectrum intensity colors that happen on the outside edge of the color wheel, but it's much more than that, including mixing with black and white paint. Unfortunately, I didn't anticipate that when I was asking you guys to go out and get paint for our projects, and so I'm gonna bump my volume up to 86 so I can hear you guys complaining and also asking me questions now. And I'm going to change my video to the bird's eye view again as I start the next project, which is going to be this sheet. I asked you guys to pick up 2 sheets, the color wheel, limit yourself to 2 copies of the color wheel, and then this sheet, this color blending sheet that I wanted us to pick up. I'm going to put these both back out on the table in case you want to come back and pick them up again. And I should probably email all these to you so that a remote learner who has a printer can print this out on cardstock and be able to do the project. The first thing I want to do is this horizontal piece up at the top of the sheet. And this is intensity change by neutralizing a color with its complement. And so we're supposed to pick a color complement pair from the color wheel, and that's why it's always nice to have a color wheel right handy so that you can pick a color complement pair. Color complements live opposite each other on the color wheel. So red and green, yellow and violet, orange and blue are the first 3 color complement pairs that come to mind because they are the primary and the secondary colors that happen to also be color complements with each other. And I should have asked you guys to buy the color primary colors of paint. I should have asked you guys to buy the secondary colors in paint. So the 3 primary colors, the 3 secondary colors, orange, green, and violet. And I should have asked you to buy black and white because this project coming up right next, we're going to actually need black and white. Not for today, but by the time we get to this on Wednesday, we're going to need black and white. And so I'm going to play a little bit with color today. And so we're going to start this project just by, can somebody shout out a color complement pair that you'd like me to work with? It could be, I'd like to use colors right out of the bottle. So red and green, orange and blue, or yellow and violet. Who can shout out their favorite color complement pair for me to use?
Orange and blue.
Ha! Riley, you're on. Let's do orange and blue. They are a color complement pair. I'm going to make some blue and some orange. Are these your favorite colors and color complements?
They're both my favorite color.
Okay. So on this sheet here, I'm looking at, I put the warm colors over on the left side and the cool colors over on the right side. So I've got green and blue and violet over here in this vertical column. And I've got yellow, orange, and red over here in this vertical column. So I'm going to take a little bit of blue and I want to be over here on the right hand side with blue, and I'm just going to put full spectrum, full strength blue into this box right here and paint it in. And then I'm going to rinse out my brush so that I can get clean bristles and a clean brush so that I can get full spectrum intensity orange painted into the other one. I suppose you guys, if you're really clever and you bought more than one brush, you could even use one brush for each one of these things. But I'm washing the brush, and then I'm pulling the pigment out of the brush to get the brush as clean as possible, checking my paper towel to make sure that there is no pigment coming out of the brush bristles. I'm going to pick up some orange, and I'm going to go over here. And because my warm colors are over on the right side, I'm going to put my full spectrum intensity orange here. And this orange is such a poor, it's not opaque, because look at that, I can still read my text through the orange, and I can sort of even read my text through the blue. I might have to put 2 coats on there, let this one dry and put another coat on to try to get an opaque version of these colors. But anyway, be that as it may, I have the 2 colors, and now I would like to neutralize the orange towards the middle. And the middle of this thing is supposed to be a natural neutral brown color. So I want to neutralize orange in 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to be able to get to brown. And ultimately, I'm also going to neutralize blue 1, 2, 3 steps and then get it to brown too. So I want to have a slightly neutralized orange in the first square, a little bit more neutralized orange in the second square, a fairly brownish orange by the third square, and then brown, something that is neither orange nor blue, in the middle square. And so we're going to do that. We're going to pull a little bit of this orange out here. We're going to just take a dot, a little teeny dot of orange, of blue, and mix it in here and try to get myself a neutralized orange. And as you can see, I had to go from very neutral to somewhat neutral to very unneutralized over here to try to find something that might be not quite so orange and maybe just a little bit of neutral in it, so that this the second square here is going to be a neutralized version of orange. Not quite as intense. Neutralized colors are really important for the designer because neutralized versions of colors are so much easier to create color harmonies with in a painting, in a composition, when you're creating fabrics and you're trying to put colors together, like in plaids or prints or something like that, or even stripes. Neutralized versions of colors mean that different colors can sit side by side and be touching each other, and they can harmonize better and not fight so much in terms of what we're going to learn as simultaneous contrast. So I've got my orange and I've got a neutralized version of the orange. I'm going to keep going here. I'm going to try to make another neutralized version of the orange that's a little bit more neutralized. So I'm going to make that one a bit more neutralized if I can. Man, this stuff dries fast. It doesn't cover real well, so you really have to kind of work with it to make yourself a neutralized orange. So my next one is just a little bit more neutral than the last one. I'm trying to make incremental color changes, making the orange more neutral, having, sorry, it has a little bit more influence of brown in it, so that when I get to this penultimate one, the penultimate one is one that's still mostly orange and not quite completely brown. And that's going to be the big challenge, because I'm really making a hell of a lot of brown here. Maybe this one is going to be an orange brown right here, and it's still not brown enough. Okay, so I want a very brown orange in this next thing here, so that in my middle one, hopefully I can get a brown that is neither orange nor blue, that has equivalent amounts of both of them in the mix, something like this. So I want that to have really no sense that it is too warm or too cool. I want it to feel neutral. I want it to have a visual feeling to me of brown. We're going to come the other way, mixing with the blues and see what we can do here. I've got a dirty brush, but I don't care. I'm going to take this dirty brush and a whole bunch of blue and see if I can get myself just a little neutralized blue to start with. I've got a super neutralized blue in the puddle that I've pulled out to the bottom. I'm going to pull out a little bit more blue and try to get myself something that's a very much a blue, that's just a little duller, not quite so full spectrum intensity blue, and put that in here. So my first one is supposed to be mostly blue or mostly orange. And you can choose any color color combination that you want, color complement pair that you want, but I want you to use the same pair for this entire project. So if you're going to use orange and blue up here, I want you to use orange and blue down here when we get to these things, which is going to be step 3. So don't use orange and blue up here and then go green and red down here, because it drives me crazy. It makes me pull my hair out. What little hair I have left, I don't want to be pulling it out. I don't know whether I have already gone too far too fast with this first blue neutralized color, because the second one feels a lot like the first one, and I'm trying to get more neutral happening here as I neutralize this blue, so that when I need to make something that's a very, very, very brown blue in my penultimate spot right next to the brown, I have a blue brown that, some people will say it's a little on the greenish side, and some people will say it's all kinds of stuff, but for the most part, it is a very neutralized blue, yet it is still, for the most part, blue, and it's not brown until I get to this central square again. And then I'm going to try to really, mix my blue and my orange together to get something that is neither orange nor blue, something that is brown, a very, very, very neutral brown. And this is where people freak out and say, James, I need more than one of these worksheets to work on, because I can't make this thing work. I have screwed it up. I need to start over again, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I'd like you guys to pick at least 2 of these things if possible, so that if you mess up one, that you can start over again and proceed confidently. Also, if you want to just leave these things to dry, and if you think that they need some fixing, for instance, these 2 oranges are very similar to each other. This one needs to be browner. And so I want to come back into that one with a second coat of an orange brown and see what I can do to brown maybe that one up a little bit. So I'm mixing a little bit more over here. I'm going to try to apply this and see if I can get this to be just a little bit browner, but it's got to be a warm brown. It's got to be a brown that has a bunch of orange influence still in it. And because I'm going a second coat over this, it's also more opaque so that it covers the paper better. It looks a little darker, but now I've got orange, somewhat neutralized orange, more neutralized orange, a very neutralized orange tending towards brown, and finally the neutral color that is neither brown nor blue, but the one that is the neutral version of the 2 color complements. And if you guys can do that piece of it for Wednesday, do that. I'd also like you guys to get black and white paint. I should have said black and white paint from the beginning. I didn't. I was wrong. But this paint is available at Walmart for 97 cents a bottle for the 2-ounce bottles. And it would be nice to have a bottle of white and a bottle of black. so that you guys can do things. The first thing we're going to do is a value scale right down the middle of this thing. So with paint, we're going to do the same thing that we did last quarter with graphite pencil, which is to make a basic value scale. We're going to put white in the top. We're going to put black in the bottom. We're going to mix white and black together to make a medium gray and put medium gray in the middle square. And then we're going to go incrementally, higher and higher and higher key to white and lower and lower and lower key to black, so that we have a value scale here in the middle. And then we're going to take our color complements and we're going to add white and black to the color complement. And we're going to put blue where it starts on a value scale as full spectrum intensity blue. So that's what I've got written in here in fine print. If you're starting with blue, blue starts right here at full spectrum intensity, and you tint up from there with white to get incremental value changes to get to a white blue up here. And then you shade down just 2 squares to get to black blue down here. White blue up here, black blue down here, incremental value changes for blue. And the same thing is going to happen for orange. If you're using orange, you're going to start in this square right here. It says so. If using orange, start here with pure orange. And you're going to mix with white to go 2 steps up on the value scale to get to a white orange. And you're going to be using black to very carefully step down the value scale. Steps on the value scale that correspond to steps on the gray scale right next door. So we're trying to make these value scales match this value scale in the middle that is just done with black and white. We want to have an orange value scale corresponding to the black and white value scale, and we want a blue value scale that corresponds to the steps on the black and white value scale. I bet that's as clear as mud right now. So I'm going to come back to you guys and say hi. Hi, it's me. We're going to play. That's what this whole line blending color theory thing is about, is trying to see how colors neutralize each other to an absolute neutral, and then how colors relate to each other in terms of value. So we have to create a value scale in the center, and then we're going to see how orange corresponds to that value scale with shades and tints of orange on this side, and how blue corresponds to the value scale in the middle with shades and tints of blue on this side. And when we get this whole thing filled in, it'll be wonderful. It'll be fantastic. Do you guys have any questions for me? Somebody on my phone has a question for me. All right. And so my phone dinged, but you guys are not dinging me right now. I've been at this for 50 minutes, and so I'm about ready to say goodbye for now. So if you have a question or a comment, either on the last project or the next project, please go ahead and open up your mics and ask away. I'm good. I just shaved this morning, so I'm a little bit itchy on my neck. Otherwise, everything is feeling pretty good this morning. I'm going to wash my brush and palette and stuff out. But this project is going to teach us a hell of a lot about color blending, and also looking at colors as values, and looking at values once again as values in the center of this thing. But this is the only piece I really need us to do today, because on Wednesday I was going to demonstrate the value scale in the middle, and then we're going to blast this one out Wednesday, Thursday, and come back and talk about this on Friday. So this is our project for this week. It's fun, it's quick, and yet it'll drive you crazy. I'll have more of these things out on the table outside my door in case you need to pick one up. And I guess I should just kind of push them out on email so that you guys have copies of them digitally in case you need to print something out at home. For the good of the order, I don't see anybody unmuting their mics to ask me desperately a question. And so I'm going to say goodbye for now. And I will see you guys again on Wednesday morning, bright and early, 9 o'clock.